I bought 6 14cm fans which are eLoop Blacknoise, supposedly the best 140mm fan on the market. The venerable Noctua NF-A15, I got a bunch of those in that case. The thing is, those Noctua fans do not have RGB, and I actually decided to go with RGB this time. I've been researching some RGB fans on the market, and as it turned out, this Blacknoise is actually even better than Noctua. It's also pretty expensive, like €36, about $40 per one fan. That's insane amount of money. But supposedly they are even better than Noctua, apart from being RGB as well. However, some people say that sometimes they have factory defects. So I'll need to test all 6 of these, whether they perform the same. We'll see how they work, and I really hope they are better than Noctuas. And Noctuas are already so good. As per the package contents, well, for the Noctua you've got a cable extender, fairly long, but actually could be longer. You've got a cable splitter, which is nice, you don't have that there. Two-way cable splitter. And you've got a low noise adapter, something I don't really understand why it even exists. Well, you can change the settings of your voltage in the BIOS. Maybe a long time ago, if you couldn't do that, this would help. An analog converter that converts your voltage into lower, but so far haven't used that really. If we go to eLoop side, we've got an extender which is actually fairly longer than the Noctua extender, about this longer, about 30%. And also we've got a smaller extender, a short one. There is also a slight difference in the coolers themselves, because the Noctua has this long kind of extender, right, stemming from the cooler, and eLoop doesn't have that. This one is short. So if we were to take the small extender and attach it right here, it would be the same as the Noctua, except you have the versatility here, which you don't have there. So for the versatility, eLoop wins. Apart from that, it also gets 2 extenders for the RGB, which apparently Noctua does not have, because it does not have RGB. So fairly similar, however there are some small differences here. Because you have connectors very close to the actual cooler, yes, it adds more versatility for the cable length. However, if you have constricted spaces where it's difficult to route, you see, because I have this bulk here, because I connected the cables, I have problems mounting the fan actually. So if it was a simple cable going out, would be much easier. So actually I prefer the Noctua way, not having this bulk right close up to your fan. If we compare the look and feel, well, the Noctua is Noctua. It's old school, more simplistic, nice old school feel. Always liked Noctuas and still do. The eLoop is way more futuristic. The fan itself, you can see, it's like one big piece, and the plastic here feels more refined, many small details, rubbers everywhere, and the structure feels very well made, and no sharp edges, nothing like that. The fan itself, I mean, it's a separate discussion. I think you can shoot a separate video discussing the fan blades, and this has been around for a very long time, while this one is more recent. And if we talk about the bearings are completely different, and that's the difference of the price actually. Noctua uses the fluid dynamic bearing, so there is a typical bearing inside, something that resembles a sleeve bearing, and there is a fluid inside that's under pressure that makes this fluid movement so quiet and nice. That's why the Noctua is so famous for this. They made it for decades now, and this one uses more advanced technology very rarely found actually, magnetic levitation bearings. This bearing is more efficient and more expensive. Here comes the price. I paid about €35 per each of these, and the Noctua is about 26-27 euros, so also expensive by the way, but not as expensive as the eLoop. Apart from that, eLoop is very difficult to find. It's easier to find in Europe because it is made in Europe. as well as Noctua actually. I think they assemble it in China, but anyway, this one is very difficult to find. Like I had to look very hard online in German stores to find this one. The eLoop is thicker, is way thicker. The eLoop is 29, while the Noctua is classic 25, I believe. So the eLoop is a little bit thicker, which may make a difference in some cases. It may be difficult to put it in some of the cases, but it provides better flow. And if you have more thickness, it can grasp the air more efficient because it has more surface area. Check out the test bench. It's insane. It took me quite a while, about an hour, to make it work. So this tube is made from a plastic bottle. Here we have decibel meter, and the airflow does not touch the recording head. Here we have the flow meter that does not touch the bottle, is right under the bottle, and right now on the minimum it measures 0.4 meters per second. And the controller is, this is what we have, the Noctua fan controller, which is not perfect because you do not see voltages, you see nothing. Basically you can have the minimum, you can have relatively the medium, and you can have the maximum here. So let's do the measurements and see how it works. So I performed all the tests with 6 samples of these coolers, and they seem to be, give or take, exactly the same. So that's great. At least there is no factory defect or something like that. This is the numbers. These numbers mean nothing to you because this is this test bench, and it will vary from test method to test method, and each situation will be different. But still, just to check the numbers. On the lowest settings, they all seem to share about the same 40 decibels and 0.8 meter per second. On the 50% setting, 41 decibel, 1.6 meters per second. And on the 90%, I added the 90% load here, it's about 49 to 50 decibels and 2.2 meters per second. And on the 100 load, it's about 53, 54, about 54 decibels and 2.5 meters per second. So they seem to share exactly the same characteristics. I haven't felt any weird noises. There was one cooler that was given this hum that all the others were not given, but after I kept it for a little bit, it went on and became normal. So probably just because it was new, it was given this hum, but so far all 6 seem to be working just fine, so that's great. So that's my Sennheiser MKH416. This is Noctua at about 10% load. So let's hear it. Go into 50% load. Go into 90% load. Go into 100. 100% load. Now let's try the eLoop. Okay, so this is the eLoop running on 10%. %. 90%. 100%. 've run multiple tests, multiple runs, multiple samples, only one Noctua sample, about 6 eLoop samples, and they seem to be very, very, very close, except the eLoop has RGB and Noctua doesn't have RGB. That's the main big difference, because if we're talking about airflow, the eLoops, for the same amount of noise, they give out, I would say, about 5 to 10% more airflow. This test bench is not perfect, but if we check these results, you'll see that for 50 decibels we get about 2.2 meters per second from the eLoop, and if we take Noctua for the 50 decibels we get about 2.0 meters per second, so that's about 10% less. But in some runs they run exactly the same. In some runs the eLoop was a little bit faster, and if we take like 100% chart here, the eLoops perform about 2.3, 2.5 meters per second for the 52 decibels or 53 decibels of noise, while the Noctua performs 2.1, 2.2 was the maximum I could get out of the Noctua. I thought it was actually because of the bearing that this was more efficient. Maybe it is because of the bearing as well, but looks like the thickness, which is like this typical thing that matters, thickness is actually bigger here, so that may be the reason why it's more efficient. If you want to replace your Noctuas, you want to buy the eLoops, I don't think it's worth doing that, except if you really need the RGB. If you need the RGB, then yes, but if performance is the only thing you're looking for, seems like that change may not be worth doing. Some people claim that whenever you use the noise blocker and you lean it onto the grills, onto the honeycomb or any other type of grills, it produces some noise which is much higher than conventional coolers because of the way that these fins work. Let's test it. Let's test the airflow, let's test the noise and whether it actually makes difference. I'll increase the airflow. We'll do the push test. So the noise has increased 49 decibels. Pull test. This one produces the most noise. Can you hear this? It does produce much more noise, that's true. 55.5 decibels. So this is our Noctua on the highest setting. Let's do the push test. It does produce more noise as well. 47.5 decibels, so it's a little bit lower, but it pushes less air as well, so we know it from the previous tests. So the pull test of the Noctua. Yeah, much more noise. 55.5 decibels. So exactly the same. So you see, guys, well, people claim that Noiseblocker produces more noise on the pull test, but the venerable Noctua produces exactly the same noise, and I think it's even more annoying. It's the same 55 decibels, but for my hearing it's a little bit more annoying, so yeah, I think Noiseblocker passed this test just fine. Look how Noctua starts from the low load. Connected the power right away. It goes right away. So this was the low load. Let me check the load to the maximum, why not? Right away. Straight up to 100%. Noiseblocker is quite different here. Going straight to the maximum setting. Went probably like in 1.5 seconds to the maximum. So the fact that it takes a little bit longer time to spin up is good. So you know those situations where your processor is 50 degrees, now in 1 second it's 60 degrees, 70, 60, 65. In those cases Noctua is like way whoa. So it jumps around, which is not good. Because this takes a little bit longer to spin up or down, I think this is actually going to be softer on those edge cases when your processor jumps around many different temperatures, and it will not ramp up and make this weird noises that Noctua does because it's so visceral, because it goes high in such low period of time. So look and feel, in general, I have to say I choose the eLoop because it's much more recent, it's futuristic, it's something I personally haven't seen before. It feels about 50% heavier than the Noctua. It looks bigger and feels heavier, so for those of you who assemble some mini ITX cases, that may actually matter. Speaking about quality assurance, Noctua is like, it's perfect, like never had any problems, never heard any reviews about Noctua not working properly, and in those rare cases that it did, they replaced it right away. eLoop is slightly different. This producer is smaller than the Noctua, not as popular right now, and there have been reports that their quality assurance is not, let's say, perfect, that not each sample behaves the same way. That's why I had to check all those 6 samples in case some of those were defective. Worked fine for me. Fan blades, as I've already said, are very, very different. This is one piece all molded together, and the blades themselves are serrated on the back. Noctua are more simple, simplistic blades, nothing sharp, nothing serrated, except you've got those things here, but this seems much more simpler. Actually, I wonder how good the Noctua actually is. It holds its market position for such a long time. The quality is impeccable. It's thinner, it's not as thick. It has worse, well, what people say, like this fluid dynamic bearing is worse, not as advanced as the magnetic levitation bearing, and still it provides almost the same results as this one. I wonder, like, if Noctua were actually to update their lineup, I think they could beat everybody if they did it right now, because this one is a little bit outdated, many years on the market. The final thoughts are, like, I've bought these coolers to replace the Noctua, so that's the final thought. If you can support RGB and also have a better airflow, why not? Why not? Like, I've been thinking about Corsair, but Corsair provides amazing RGB experience. However, Corsair is inferior to Noctua airflow, so I wasn't going to do it. Like, for me, performance is paramount, it's very important. But here I get the RGB and I get a better performance, so why the hell not? All the links in the description as always. Stay tuned, stay in touch, and thanks for watching.